AITA for arguing with my soon-to-be husband over calling our soon-to-be daughter the new kid. Me and my partner 23-yo female 26-yo male have been together for 2 years. Last year we found out I was pregnant with my first daughter. He has one child 5-yo boy. Thing is keep calling her the new kid when referring to her even though we picked her name 6-7 months ago. We've had this conversation before, where I asked him why does he keep calling her that instead of using her actual name. He said he was sorry and that he needs to think of a better nickname for her. He's been calling her the new kid again and again after. I asked him nicely, but today I started arguing with him. My due date is on the 5th so she's yet to be born. He used that as an excuse for not using her name and not calling her our daughter instead of the new kid. I asked him if he wasn't expecting the delivery of our beautiful daughter to be just fine, and he decided to hang up the phone. I just want to know because I feel like I was emotional about this due to my pregnancy hormones. AITA for asking my uncle to drive me to a public bathroom and humiliating my mom. Throwaway account because several of my family members love this sub. My 17F family really loves the outdoors, so when there's a big family meetup it's usually a picnic in nature. Somewhere green and far enough from any city noise. It can be very relaxing and healing sometimes, but today it was very unfortunate for me because my period just started. I could tell I had to replace my pad very soon, but to my dismay I couldn't see a public bathroom anywhere near. I was panicking more and more by the second. I asked my mom for help and she told me to get over myself and just do it behind a bush. Usually I don't have a huge problem finding somewhere private and doing whatever I need to do. But today was a particularly bad period day and I was already super uncomfortable. She said I have no choice because there aren't any public bathrooms near us. I decided to ask my uncle because he knows the area better and he told me there's 1-2 minutes drive away, but walking there can be pretty difficult. I begged my mom to drive me there, but she refused. She said she didn't want to leave my siblings all alone, even though there were 5 more adults there. So I asked my uncle and he agreed. When I was back, my mother took me aside and blew up at me for embarrassing her like that and making the rest of the family think she doesn't care about me and I need to rely on other people to help. I thought it's not that big of a deal because I just asked one person, and I really needed help, but maybe I could have just walked there and not tell anyone. AITA, sorry if anything I said didn't make sense. English is my AITA for kicking my in-laws out of my home. I 27F have an 8-meter-old daughter with my husband 38 meters. We have had issues with his father and stepmother since the beginning of our relationship but we have done our best to keep things civil for my husband's sake. Currently DH is overseas in the military and left when our daughter was 3 days old. This past weekend my husband had begged me to let his parents come meet our daughter and I was told they would stay at a hotel. The plans were to meet at my aunt's home during the day so they could meet our daughter. Well, Thursday night there was knocking at the door at 10 p.m. It was his dad with his stepmom. They came early and no hotels were affordable. They ended up in the guest room. My husband apologizes. He had no idea why they were there but asked me to make it work because he was busy with work. Well, early Friday morning I woke up to my baby screaming in her crib in my room. His stepmom had picked her up from her crib and apologized saying that the baby was awake so she thought it would be fine to pick her up. I ended up grabbing my daughter and told her to get out of my room. She said nothing but left and I admit, I was harsh in tone. The whole day I am becoming increasingly annoyed because they had complained about dust, that I had a pile of laundry to wash, and they felt that it was unfair that my family is around the baby more than his. Mind you, they live over 12 hours away. My family is within 1 hour of me. After I got my daughter down for bed we were eating dinner when his stepmom asked me if I was going to apologize for snapping at her this morning in my room. I told her no. She shouldn't have been in my room to begin with and then she said well, my therapist told me to tell you how I feel and I feel that you are an ungrateful bitch. We came here to see our granddaughter and help you out but we come here to get snapped at in the morning. My son's house is a mess, and you won't even let her cry for more than a few minutes before you scoop her away from us. That is when I told them to pack their shit and leave. All hell broke loose and we got into a huge argument. I ended up calling the police to remove them from the home. And now all of his family are telling me that I'm an asshole. They called my husband while he was sleeping and he felt that I may have taken it too far by kicking them out. Others are telling me I was an asshole, so am I the asshole? AITA for leaving for the weekend after my wife agreed to host Easter at our house without consulting me. My wife 38F and I 39M have been married for 12 years and have 3 kids 11, 8, 6. We live reasonably close to family on both our sides. Our house isn't huge by any means, but it's big enough for our family. However, no one else on my wife's side of the family lives in a house. Her siblings all either rent homes with roommates or live in apartments. Her parents downsized into a smaller townhome about 5 years ago. As a result, anytime her family wants to get together for a holiday or special occasion, we are the ones who end up hosting. It's not even a discussion with her family anymore. Everyone just assumes that we are going to be the ones who host. We at least rotate major holidays between my family and hers, but my siblings and parents can also host gatherings, so hosting duties are spread out amongst all of us. But every Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July, Easter, etc. that we spend with her family, we host. And her family are not the best guests. They will bring food if we ask, but anytime there is cleanup or other help, they are nowhere to be found. I have expressed my dislike of this arrangement to my wife numerous times. She has insisted that I not say anything to her family about it and to let her handle it. However, nothing has ever changed. We hosted Christmas for her family this year and it sucked. People showed up late, forgot the food they were supposed to bring. No one helped with cleaning. People let their kids make messes, etc. Same old story as every other time. After that I told my wife I was done. I told her I don't want to host her family until someone else on her family steps up and hosts something, or we book some other venue and I'll chip in to pay for it. She promised to talk to her family about it and figure something out for next holiday. For Easter this year we were supposed to just have it be our family, no extended family. But a couple weeks ago my wife met up with her mom and sister for lunch. When she got home she informed me that she talked to them about how hard hosting Christmas was. She said her mom and sister agreed that they would do better and offered to prove it to us on Easter, and my wife agreed. We got into a huge fight over it. I told my wife that she is on her own for this one. I told her I would be spending the entirety of Easter weekend with my family and I'll take any kids with me that want to come, but I am not going to be helping with any of the hosting duties whatsoever. She thinks I am overreacting and that I need to give her family this final chance because her mom and sister seemed really sincere during their talk. I told her I don't care what they say, I'm not going to be involved at all because I won't be able to hold my tongue this time and I don't want it to come to that. She is not happy with me at all, but I don't really care. To top it off, all 3 of our kids want to come spend the weekend with me instead of staying. AITA for making my girlfriend wait to go to the ER. The other night my girlfriend was reaching for something on a stool when she slipped and fell and injured her ankle. She was in quite a lot of pain and we both agreed she needed to go to the ER. She asked me to drive her. Now normally of course I would be happy to drive her. However, the day before my friend had gotten me a couple of rare high ABV beers which I had consumed with dinner right before this happened. Basically I was feeling very buzzed, and definitely over the legal limit to drive. I told her as much, and said I can't drive her now, but if she gives me 2-3 hours to metabolize the alcohol I should be fine. She was really upset about this and tried to argue that it was only 2-3 miles away, which is true, but I didn't feel comfortable driving and additionally risking a DUI. She then begged me to let her drive my car then. The problem with that is she doesn't have a license, she doesn't have much experience driving, and she isn't on my insurance, so I also didn't feel comfortable at all with her driving my car, especially in the condition she was in. Again, I told her I can either wait until I am in a safe condition to drive, or she can call an ambulance and get a ride that way. She didn't want to use an ambulance, understandably, because they're very expensive. I also suggested that she could get an Uber, but she didn't think they would take an injured passenger to the hospital. Not sure if that is true or not. Basically we ended up waiting a couple of hours and then I drove her. She didn't talk to me the entire car ride there. Our back and has been giving me the cold shoulder ever since. I honestly don't know what else I could have. AITA for not inviting sister's family to the beach on Easter holiday. Hi everyone, I'm eager to read your responses because I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. A bit of background, my 34F sister 37F. 37F is my mom's favorite, no way around it. She got married really young and her husband is fine but a bit clueless. He works hard and provides a nice life, but lifting a finger for the kids would be beyond him, lol. So my mom always instilled the we gotta help her out mentality, and I poured my heart and soul into helping her raise her kids for years. And I mean it. Sadly, she then thought it was my responsibility and even left me with her kids hours after my C-section. Even now she throws full tantrums that ruin family vacations if I don't want to look after her kids. But the general consensus in my family is, why couldn't you just take them? They really don't see the problem. I mean, I would still make the effort of helping out if she had ever been even a bit nice to my kids. She's indifferent at most and downright rude at times. Which brings me to the present situation. My husband's family has a beach house and for years we would go there with my entire family to spend holidays, Easter, Christmas, New Year's and the like. However, there is always something with her. I bring the food for everyone but she'll bring some snacks for her kids only. My son asked for a yogurt one time and she said no lamau. One time I asked for a bit of cheese for my daughter and she said no. That sort of thing. She'll bring a bag of pool noodles and shit from the dollar store for her kids only. My kids aren't allowed to touch them or use them and she acts so annoyed if they even ask about them. For the record, my kids are 5 and 3 yo. So this week we're going to the beach house and I haven't invited her. She asked if they could go and I said no. So she wrote to my husband thinking he'd override me and say yes of course. He didn't even reply to her message. Now she's boo-hooing to anyone who will listen about how bad I am and practically it's my fault her family won't get a vacation. AITA for not inviting her. I feel terrible for her kids but I just can't stand her being so effing rude to my kids in my face and my AITA for refusing to be maid of honor over a bridesmaid, causing her to get fired. The people in this story are my best friend Jane, her brother Elliot, and his girlfriend of 2 years, Kathy. Jane is marrying her fiancé Tom in July and she asked me to be her maid of honor. This was sort of expected as Jane is essentially a sister to me. I was surprised, however, that she asked her brother's girlfriend, Kathy, to be a bridesmaid. Jane later confided that Kathy had kind of pressured her into it and she had done it to make Elliot happy. The issue is, Kathy hates me. Like seriously hates me. She blames me for all the issues she has with Elliot and Jane's parents, and for her not having a better friendship with Jane. She also thinks I am trying to steal Elliot from her. I'm not, but also cannot handle whenever he and I disagree on anything and will go way overboard defending him and arguing with me. I was determined to put this all aside for Jane, though. This was actually not going too badly. But last weekend, we went to a bridal shop to choose bridesmaid dresses. Jane mentioned that she wanted me and Elliot to walk down the aisle together, and Kathy lost it. She called me desperate, crazy, a pick-me, a fake, fat, and a bunch of other things. Looking back, I probably should have said more than I did, but at that moment I could see how everyone was looking at her, and I didn't want them looking at me the same way, so I literally just said yeah, I'm not dealing with this. Either she's out, or I am, and picked my stuff up and left. I apologized to Jane for the drama and offered her a long weekend of babysitting and some flowers to make up for it and she accepted so we're okay now because of this. Jane has said that Kathy can't be a bridesmaid anymore because she wants me as maid of honor. This has caused issues with Kathy, and Elliot by extension. Both Elliot and Kathy have apologized and said Kathy will behave better for all the wedding events, but I'm not willing to budge. Jane's mother and my mother both think I should drop the ultimatum, and I don't want to make things hard on Jane, so I'm rethinking, but I know there's other things she will try to cause issues with me over. And I just don't know how long I can keep being the bigger person with her. So AITA for causing this drama? AITA for refusing to house my cousin. My 25F cousin 17M recently got into NYU. I'm so proud of him. My mom told me when I invited her over for dinner a couple of weeks ago. She then brought up that he could live with me instead of dorming. She brought it up in a casual and joking manner so I laughed and said I can't live with that drama queen for the life of me. She shrugged it off and she didn't bring up the topic again that night. Almost 4 days later I got a call from my aunt. She reiterated what my mother said and said she was so grateful for what I was doing for my cousin. I went silent for a little and asked what she meant by that. My aunt said that I had agreed to take my cousin in and let him live with me for his academic career. I was shocked at first and told her that I never agreed to that. She then followed with word to word, I know, but he's your cousin. The least you can do is let him stay at your apartment. Now that I type it out it seems sort of innocent, but in that moment it angered me. I lost my cool and told her I don't owe anybody shit and hung up. I'll admit, I didn't handle that in the best manner and I could have been a lot calmer, but I really don't want someone to live with me. I live by myself in a 2-bedroom apartment in Forest Hills. I already pay a lot for rent, and have a very tight budget for food. Even if his parents offered to pay for his expenses, such as food and transportation, I still wouldn't want him living with me. Shortly after my blow up with my aunt, a few of my family members began blowing up my phone saying that I'm being selfish and I'm jealous of my cousin's success. My uncle texted me saying that I'm ruining his son's life and ranted about how self-absorbed I am. To be frank, I don't care what he or anyone else in my family tells me about this situation. There's a reason I try to avoid them at family functions. What makes me wonder if I am the asshole is when my mother said that I was being unfair and that I'll open my apartment door for one-night stands but not for her own family. I told her that she can have a say in who I let in my apartment when she starts paying my rent. Right now, I'm contemplating blocking my mom. Part of me feels like I am being an asshole and the other part of me feels like it's my apartment so I shouldn't be bullied into anything I don't want to do. I'm not mad at my cousin because he's a kid, but I'm really mad at everyone in my family taking his parents and mom's side of the story. My dad has been very supportive of my decision and is reprimanding my mom and her family about the whole situation. So AITA for refusing to make breakfast for my Phil. I 25F recently got married 8 months to my 28-year-old husband. My Phil came to visit 3 days ago and when he arrived late at night I was shocked because we were not expecting him until a day ago. I'm heavily pregnant and I could easily pop any time from now. My energy levels have dropped significantly and I can barely do any housework. Now the day he arrived I was lucky because I had prepared the meal in bulk for meal prep as I'm doing this to save energy. So I served him the food and it wasn't a problem at all. Now fast forward to today. My Phil has an interview, but last night both him and my husband didn't let me know what time he was going to leave. I was woken up early morning by my husband to iron his father's clothes. I didn't want to, but I did it. I haven't been well lately due to pregnancy, and getting out of bed is a bit hard. My husband then went on to scroll on his phone whilst I did the ironing. He didn't bother to at least boil water for his father's breakfast. After I was done ironing, he asked why I hadn't made breakfast for his father and went on to say I don't love his relatives. I went back to bed and told him I wasn't well and that I wasn't going to make breakfast. He went on to say he can't wait for me to go to my parents after I give birth. I'm meant to stay at my parents and learn a few things about the baby because I've become AITA for refusing to share my huge inheritance with my step-siblings. So I 17M found out only a few weeks ago that my dad left me a lot of money in a trust. Like, it's such a crazy amount that I didn't really believe it at first, but it's true. The reason is my dad had inherited from both his parents already. He also inherited from the only two uncles he had as well, and one of them was very successful and had a business. This was all explained in a letter my dad wrote to me. He had the trust set up before he came into most of the money, but when he found out his cancer was incurable, he decided to put it all aside for me once all medical bills were paid off for him. My parents were separated but not legally divorced when my dad was sick, died, but they weren't living together or a couple for a year. This was 10 years ago. My mom found out about the money because she read the letter he sent to me about the issue. Then she insisted she was joining me to meet with the lawyer to discuss this. When my mom learned about the money, she told her husband, and suddenly the money became a very touchy subject. I can't touch it until I'm 19 with the way my dad set it up. So I have some time to deal with this, but my mom and her husband want me to share the money with my step-siblings 14, 8 and 7. The money is enough where even if I pay for college and buy a house I would have money left. The way the trust works, I was told it's also getting interest, which my dad had intentionally set up. My mom and her husband have struggled financially for years. They started dating when his youngest kid was 1. His wife had died. He was going through a legal battle with the mother of his oldest, and his oldest is in therapy for trauma caused by their mom. Also, his youngest was born with some medical issues and has lots of doctor appointments. Between everything, money was tight. We live paycheck to paycheck and I work to make my own life a little more comfortable, but we had no college savings or anything before this. My mom and her husband drained their own bank account to keep a roof over our heads. This has all been brought up to me as a good reason why I should do this. My mom told me it was selfish for dad to put it all away solely for my future, and he should have been thinking about raising me as well. She told me I might not call her husband dad or his kids my siblings, but we are a family and that this family has been through so much together and we have struggled for so long, that it would be so good and generous for me to do this. I told her it's not like I can access the money now. She said no, but when I do, I should set up accounts for my 3 step-siblings so they have a better chance at college, and if not college, the chance to have a help start in life. Despite all their trying to talk me into it, I said no. I told them I wasn't going to share the money. My mom was so mad, but it was nothing compared to how mad her husband was. They told me to quit being selfish and start acting with compassion. AITA for refusing to wear a bra when my roomie's BF stays over. I don't wear a bra at home. I go to college, then library, and then work, then gym. I am out at 7 a.m. and back at 10 p.m. Usually I take a quick shower when I get home, then make a snack and just relax for an hour before bedtime. On weekends I barely leave the apartment beside the occasional outing with friends or colleagues. My roommate and I are very close, but now she has been biting my head off about me not wearing a bra at home. I was confused. Then she explained that it was about her BF. I laughed in her face and told her Tom put a bra on his eyes instead. She got very upset, but I told her that I wasn't interested in her BF. Not in the slightest. She got offended and said that he wasn't interested in me either, so I said, then why are we arguing? It is only an issue if we were interested in each other. Tell him. Next time he sees me braless, he can pretend that I am a wall. According to her, it wasn't about interest but being invasive and he felt uncomfortable. Would you think that it was fine if he showed his D? I called her stupid because I was in my home. I wouldn't go braless in his home, and if he chose to go naked in his home, the only right I have is to get the H out of there. She called me the am I AITA for telling my parents that I blame them instead of my brother. I 15M turned 15 last Thursday and had my party that Friday. Everything was going good until my nephew 5M came. I didn't even want him to come because he's not well behaved at all, but they told me that they didn't want him to feel excluded by everyone else being invited and they'll just have my brother watch him better. I told my dad that I didn't want him coming because I didn't want him throwing a fit all night, but they told that he wouldn't be and that I shouldn't be dramatic. They told me that they didn't want their grandchild to be upset because he wouldn't be there, and if something does go wrong they'll take responsibility for it. My nephew threw my fucking birthday cake on the floor. So something did go wrong. He was upset that he didn't get to blow out the candles and started screaming and crying when my brother held him back. After he calmed down, he literally dug his hands in the cake and slid it to the floor. I was disappointed, not surprised. My brother and parents were apologetic, and my brother compensated our parents for my cake and apologized to me. It's been 3 days and I'm basically over it now, but my brother called me after school and told me that he wanted to take me out for an apology birthday dinner, but I told him that I was fine and that our parents were already planning on getting me another cake, so it wasn't really a big deal. He asked me if I was sure and I told him that I was and thanked him for giving them the money. I told him I was already planning on going out with my friends and we could do it another time. After that we kinda talked some more before he hung up. When my parents got home, they told me that my brother told them that morning that he was gonna invite me out, and they asked me if I accepted it. When I told them I didn't, they got mad at me for refusing and said that I probably made him feel worse than he already does. He didn't sound hurt to me. I told them that he already gave them money to pay for the cake and I'm grateful for that. I told them that I don't blame him at all and I blame them instead. I said that if they felt bad, it could have been avoided if they didn't invite my nephew in the first place, and that they said that they were gonna take responsibility, but instead they are making my brother pay for the cake they said they were responsible for. They got mad when I said this and said that they didn't mean to ruin my birthday and that they didn't want my nephew and brother to feel left out. My parents have been acting pretty cold to me since, but I'm not too worried. Whenever we have a disagreement, they usually ignore me until the next day and they magically forget everything that happened. I'm just confused if I was AITA for telling my sister I am not the golden child. I just wasn't a pain in the ass. My sister is a goddamn mess. She was a lot growing up and each week some issue would appear that could be as simple as a tantrum, or mom-dad getting a call from the school. I'm short, she was a lot. Not to mention therapy for her basically drained the family dry. I was giving more freedom since my parents trusted me. I could go to mall by myself and they knew they wouldn't get a call from security about stealing. That happened before, so they trusted me and gave me more freedom to do stuff. I have literally watched her get a chance to prove our parents can trust her and then fuck it up. Our relationship isn't good. My dad gave me his old car for my last year of college. I need it for an internship. My sister made a comment that of course the golden child gets a car. I snapped and told her I am not the golden child, I just wasn't a pain in the ass that the family has drained themselves dry for her multiple times and to keep her mouth shut. She called me a jerk and ran to her room. AITA if I don't want to sleep someplace else so GF can have girls night. I 28 meters live with my 26 FGF in a house together and she wants me to go spend the night at my mom's house so she can have a girls slumber party at her house. I can stay in our bedroom happily. I have movies and video games to stay busy and have no problem staying in the room the whole time. So AITA who doesn't want to leave for the approval for everything? Okay, so I'm in IT, and where I work, my team is awesome. We are usually allowed to our own devices about everything related to the network and equipment related to keeping everything running. Our manager usually just wanted reasons for everything, and if it made sense, it was cleared same day. Anyways, the present day around the beginning of the year our higher managers decided they're going to keep a tighter leash on spending and such, so they looked to the IT department because we do at times need $6,000 of hardware for replacements, normal wear and tear over the year. And we recently did a $75,000 network rebuild because of corporate decisions, but we've kept to the assigned budget. In order to keep IT under their thumb, they've switched to requiring submitting approvals before submitting the official purchase order. So the malicious compliance, the notice said essentially if IT needs to order it, we want to approve it first. So everything gets an approval form. IT needs $75 for more post-its. Approval form. Critical stuff for an immediate response. Approval form. Basically it's gotten to the point where something that took us 1-2 weeks for delivery now takes 4-5 weeks for the same thing, which has caused strains on everything we usually work on. Parts that need replaced are still on order. So, stations and computers are offline until replacements are approved. It's satisfying watching the management scramble to mass approve things. Once it's brought up as impacting the site's work, minor edit to correct a few things. If line breaks don't show, apologies but I'm on mobile. Bitchy still tries to break us up, reveals her miserable nature instead. My partner's sister has never been nice to me despite me actively trying to get to know her, be kind and build a positive relationship. She has never welcomed me into his life, only been mean and rude towards me for years, and harshly rejected any attempts of friendship or working things out. So I gave up, quietly cut her out of my life and remain civil. She avoids me anyway, which works out great. They share a friend group. Their friends think she's so nice. She repeatedly told me she has no issue with me. Their friends told me several times she has no issue with me. My partner spoke to her about it, but told me she never said a bad word about me. Other than that, we'd never be close because we're two different people. She bullies my partner too and often belittles him. Since they come from an abusive home life where that was their everyday, he didn't recognize how badly she was treating him and would get defensive when I brought it up that I didn't like how she treated either of us. People outside the situation told me that it's really her issue and has nothing to do with me. Unfortunately, as much as I wanted to protect my partner, I knew his sister was his closest relationship as they were each other's anchors in their abusive family life. I never wanted to separate or come between them, but had to protect my own safety. He had to get there on his own. For the record, my partner has always been very good to me, needed leeway to learn how to do better, needed to learn what to look for, given me lots of safety, protects me, and I love him deeply. My revenge with his sister is kill her with kindness and make myself untouchable. I give her no excuses to pick a fight with me. I built up positive relationships with all their friends' kids, and their friends' pets. If she complains about me, she's getting rebuffed and looks bad. I set boundaries on how I want to be treated and refuse to be her whipping post. She complained that she has to walk on eggshells with me as a result. Most importantly, I built up such a healthy relationship with my partner over the last 5 years. He's no longer taking her abuses, which was the last straw. Eventually, her own romantic relationship of 10 years completely blew up last year, ending horribly. She recently revealed she doesn't like me. I knew it the entire time. It felt so vindicating after years of being gaslit and my gut feeling being right. She recently told my partner she has problems with me but refuses to ever say what they are or work them out with me. She more recently told my partner she is done trying to help him and doesn't want to be around him anymore. She tried to break us up, which failed. She is now trying to turn their friends against him. I can tell she envies my partner, used her long-term romantic relationship as the one thing she felt she had over him and deep down doesn't want him to be happy. I know she hates herself, is deeply insecure and in a lot of pain but refuses to self-reflect and look inward and makes excuses to justify a lot of awful behavior. I did a lot to overcome the pain she put me through. I feel bad for her and wish her healing, but for now, I'm personally happy to have her out of my life. A mantra I live by is be so positive that negative people don't want to be around you. And I love when the trash takes itself out. Kindness, happiness and sincerity can be very effective weapons. Yeah, I still pettily enjoy watching miserable people implode on themselves and fail hard at hurting others. Don't treat me or my loved ones badly. TLDR, my partner's sister is a miserable person who bullies him and never treated me well. Felt like I was going crazy as everyone told me she never had a problem with me. I never gave her an excuse. She can't talk shit about me to anyone without looking bad. Over time, she revealed her true nature, admitted she never liked me, but refuses to work things out, and she's torpedoing her own relationships. My partner is now refusing to take her abuse. Co-worker was pushing all his workload onto me for months. Her and me were made to be a team on a 6-month project. Every day, she would leave for 3 to 5 hours. Whenever I asked her about where she disappeared to, and every day I only heard nonsense. The manger needed help, the new guys need help, I'm doing this. I'm doing the 2 months into the project I was fed up. I could go to HR but I had a better idea. I'll take few personal days. Let's see how she does. You see, every day you have to submit the amount of work that you got done with. And without me there for 4 days she couldn't finish on time. She even called me to ask when I was gonna be back. It's not the same without you here. When I went back to work she was back at its same pattern. So now I went to HR. Now I have a new project partner. And it's someone who doesn't slack. Contacted Center for Mosquitoes Control after fallout with old housemates. There's a long story that is the actual fallout between my old housemate landlord, but it's not super important for the revenge part. Long story short, I had to move on very short notice. I lived in a shared house situation that wasn't exactly a legal rental, and I was not about to fight to stay in a place where I was not wanted. I packed up no problem, had some friends who also used to also be friends with my housemate landlord, before they got crazy come help move the big stuff, and had a few good laughs while doing it. Now the revenge part. The house I used to live in was nice, once upon a time, but had fallen into serious disrepair after said friend came into ownership of the property. It was really gross, to be honest, and I was constantly cleaning messes that were not mine, and just trying to avoid anything I couldn't actually fix. The issues continued outside, where there had been 2 functional water features, a pool and hot tub, that all worked properly when the house was purchased, but had slowly died and become disgusting and full of stagnant water. After moving out, I went online to my county's website for mosquito control, and wrote a letter, from the perspective of their next door neighbor, who I knew could see the gross pool from her deck, and reported all the stagnant water and broken water features. A few weeks later, I was driving past the house, and lo and behold the front water feature was running. And the lawn was mowed for the first time in who knows how long, and there was no trash on the lawn driveway. It was incredibly satisfying to know they were made to fix the issues by the town, because they couldn't have cared less about the upkeep while I lived there. A side note, the front water feature was very much surrounded by poison ivy. You would have had to fight through it and probably remove it all to fix the mechanism. Sweet petty revenge. COVID grocery revenge. My daughter worked as a supervisor in a large supermarket chain while studying at university. During the early stages of COVID, she received persistent abuse from people every single day, all of them well older than her. The issue was usually to do with products not being available and the store not being open as long as it usually was. She is a very cool customer, so just took most of it on the chin. You stop yelling pretty quickly when the person you're abusing just refuses to react at all. But one old guy went too far. He started screaming at a young female checkout operator who started to cry. The language was explicit and grossly inappropriate, and was delivered at the top of his voice in front of many other shoppers. My daughter went and took over from her and completed bagging. Again, she refused to react to his abuse. She then took his picture and told him she would be sharing his photo with the police. Veiled threat and that he was banned from that store for life. Fact, it was store policy. Then she waited for him to leave and followed him downstairs into the car park. He pushed his trolley behind his car, then went around to the driver's side and mucked around with something. My daughter removed his 2 grocery bags from the trolley and tipped them out onto the car park floor, disappearing back upstairs before he had realized what had happened. She used to defend the ugly behavior from many because she understood that a lot of people felt scared and threatened by COVID, but this guy went way too far. Creating school schedule headaches for a cheating ex. Back in college, my freshman year girlfriend cheated on me. At first, I didn't think much of revenge and resigned myself to be quietly pissed about the situation. Then I discovered her Edu account was still logged into my laptop, and it also happened to be right before our registration for next semester's classes. I waited for her to register for classes and for a few days to pass and classes to fill up. I then deleted her class schedule and the email confirming the drops. I checked daily to see if she had noticed, and after nearly a week I saw a brand new schedule with 4 Friday classes and 2 classes at 7:30 a.m. during the week. The breakup was long enough past that I can't imagine she thought it could be me. And for 4 months she was moderately inconvenienced. A petty win that I still love. Dealership pulled bait and switch. It cost them over $50,000. The city I live in has extremely inflated vehicle values compared to the surrounding areas. If you buy the same car from a neighboring state, you can often save $3-4K without really trying. When I buy a new vehicle, which happens every 3-4 years, I always look in the surrounding states to compare pricing. This story happened about 5 years ago, and the malicious compliance is still ongoing to this day. I was shopping for a new car, brand new, and found one that matched my specs about 12 hours away in a neighboring state. It was priced about $5,000 below comps. After looking up flights, there was a one-way direct flight that took me to their local airport for around $175, plus the gas to drive back. I was looking at a total of maybe $275 to save $5,000. Absolutely worth it in this situation. I reached out to the dealership, negotiated a bit, and agreed on a price. I let them know that I would be flying in to pick up the car, and offered to pay in full in advance of the flight. They told me that all they needed was a $1,000 deposit, and that the car was considered mine. We signed a contract and I paid the deposit. And then I booked the flight for 3 days from then. First sign of things gone awry when I showed up. Up at the airport, the dealership was supposed to pick me up. This had been arranged in advance. A quick phone call later, and I grabbed an Uber to take me the 20 miles to the dealership with the promise of them covering that cost. No big deal either way. Second sign of things gone awry when I showed up at the dealership. The salesman I had been speaking with asked me if I wanted to walk the lot with him to look at a few cars. Yes, cars, plural. Questioning what he meant by that, we walked into the lot to see these cars that he was talking about. Were these some special type of gold inlaid, full self-driving, full self-flying, Amaze mobiles? No, they were not. When I point blank asked to see the car that I was buying, the one with VIN XYZ listed in this signed contract with a deposit on it, I was told it was no longer available. The salesman offered to show me similar cars, which would have been fine were we able to come to similar terms on pricing, but all of these cars outrageously priced, think $2K over MSRP, instead of $5,000 under MSRP. Important note for later: there was never a mention or any paperwork, signage, etc. of any incentives for giving 5-star reviews. Fast forward to 3 hours. I am now convinced this dealership never had this specific car on the lot, and that this was 100 a bait and switch gone wrong. The dealership was unwilling to sell me a similar vehicle at a similar price to our negotiated one. We were over $5,000 apart, and were unwilling to pay the flight costs for this bait-and-switch scenario. A heated discussion ensued between myself and the GM, where he told me to go ahead and leave a bad review, but that I wasn't getting any free money from him. I took an Uber to a nearby hotel and booked a flight back home for the next day. Total cost? Around $750. Cue malicious compliance. This dealership had an average Google rating of right around 4.5 stars and around 400 total reviews. Pretty solid for a dealership. That night, while I was sitting in the hotel room, I had some time to burn. I spent a couple of hours creating new email accounts, just so that I could leave multiple reviews for this dealership. All said and done, I had left around 21-star reviews over the course of that night, and then sort of stopped caring about the reviews. At this point my focus shifted to recovering my lost travel expenses. A few days after getting back, I sent the dealership a demand letter for $750, which they promptly ignored. Since we had done the original contract with the deposit in both states, I was allowed to file a small claim suit in my state, which I did. The dealership never showed up to court and I received a default judgment for $750. I did collect that, by the way. It took a few certified letters, a few phone calls and about a year, but I did get a check for $750. As you can imagine, I was still not a happy camper. What they had done was wrong on so many levels. All of my friends knew the story of how I was bait and switched, and the fact that I flew to the dealership on a one-way ticket only made it that much worse. They had all left a bad review or two, but nothing more than a normal mad customer. Cue malicious compliance. Long term I don't know how it started, or how it ended up lasting as long as it has, but at some point I had some time on my hands and left a bad review for this dealership. Just one. Not two. Not three. One. In doing so, I noticed that all of the reviews I had left right after leaving the dealership were gone, probably taken down for being fake or because I had left so many at the same time and the dealership reported them. I wanted to make sure this dealership wouldn't do this to someone else. So the next day, I checked to make sure that one bad review I had just left was still there. It was, and since I was thinking about it, I went ahead and created another account, and left another 1-star review. Fast forward 2-3 years. It has now become a habit. Every time I have a few minutes to spare, I create a new account and leave a 1-star review for this dealership. Their current rating? 1.9 stars with nearly 3.5k total reviews. I am personally responsible for at least half of those reviews. When you open the dealer's website, one of the large banners that flashes across the screen advertises $50 for a 5-star review. Something about showing the review to your salesman to get a $50 Visa gift card. It has been this way since about a year after this bait and switch occurred, right around the time the 1-star reviews began to accumulate. Assuming I am responsible for half of their reviews, and the fact that the dealership only has 3.5k total reviews, they have paid $50 per review for at least 1,000 reviews, likely more than that. Meaning, they have implemented a policy to pay for reviews, have spent $50,000 doing so, and have still seen their average rating drop consistently since telling me to go ahead and leave a bad review. Edited to add. Yes, I got my $1,000 deposit back. I paid with a CC and it was refunded without issue. I couldn't sue for time spent or force the contract to be honored because I sued in small claims court. Time spent not allowable and contract too high of a value for small claims. And yes, the case was 100 winnable if I were to have sued to force the contract to be honored. But legal fees I would have needed to hire an attorney, and the additional time spent meant this was just not worth pursuing. And finally, no, I will not provide the name of a dealership. I know that some companies sue people who leave reviews. I am not willing to risk that, so will continue to remain anonymous and allow the dealership to do the same. I did report their review practice, along with screenshots showing that they are offering payment for 5-star reviews to Google, etc. If anything happens, I'll update this post, though I would expect that may take months. Denied leave on a day with no work, so I'll take them on days I have work. I'm a teacher at a small, new school. We currently have 2-year levels, so our teaching schedules are incredibly light. This means every teacher has at least one day where they have no classes, and it's common to take leave on that day. Mine is Friday. I realized we will move to a full schedule next month, and figured I might as well use some excess leave and applied to take Fridays for the rest of the month off. Later, I was told my leave was denied because it's not nice that you get to have multiple long weekends when your colleagues don't, and I responded with, so you're saying just because my lesson-free day is on a Friday I don't get to take leave, even though the science teachers can take every Tuesday off, language teachers take every Thursday, and so on? He kind of waffled around that it doesn't look good and that I still have to consider a homeroom lesson I have Fridays, which is a student-led activity time. I'm actually not supposed to do anything intervene, Just be present. While students handle everything that someone else will have to cover. I've always gotten my own covers before applying for leave, so HR has never even had to do anything. Anyway, I told him straight up that I don't mind if they want to deny my leave, but to remember that I'm there because I want to be, not because I need to be. I told him okay, but just so you know it was a courtesy on my end to use my leave on days with the least impact. So you're essentially telling me you'd rather me take leave on days I miss actual classes, which I have no qualms doing. He kind of mumbled something and then I thanked him and left. So that Friday I came in, and then the following Monday I called in sick and missed my class. I have about 20 leave days to use over the next 7 months, not counting school halls. That make up the final year of my contract here, and I plan to use all of them. I've also told them on a separate occasion that there's literally no downside to me whether or not they deny my leave requests, because 80 of the leave I've taken the past 2 years has been unpaid, because I don't care about the money. Once, they denied a 3-day unpaid leave request and I told a colleague, I can just not show up. What are they gonna do? Not pay me? That's literally what I asked for in the first place, so either way I get what I want. They need me more than I need them, as the sole teacher of the most popular elective subject in the school. It's somewhat niche, so it's not easy to just find a replacement. Not to mention I have both qualifications and experience in my subject's industry, so any replacement they do find is probably going to be not as good. Don't tell me I should smile more. 27 female. Work night security in a hospital. This particular night started off annoying. I made another post about what happened before this shift that made me so annoyed, and after getting to my post I was chatting with my coworker, venting a little. I'll admit I can have RBF at times, especially when I don't have the energy to mask at that time. As we were standing there watching everyone, this guy leaving tells me something like smile more. It could be worse, with a way more chipper attitude than I could handle at that moment. Now I can make myself cry, but not at the drop of a dime. But I can easily make my eyes visibly well up with tears. So I made my eyes well up, made it look like I was going to cry, and responded my baby boy was just diagnosed with leukemia, and turned away covering my face. I couldn't see his reaction but heard him awkwardly mumble a sorry before leaving. As soon as the guy was out of sight, my coworker and I started laughing. I didn't have any kids. Don't tell people they should smile. It's annoying as hell, and personally I think it's rude. Mind your own. Finally getting my personal justice after experience with abusive ex. I'm gonna try to be as succinct as possible here. I was with my abuser for 3 years. During this time he tried to control me. He belittled and purposely limited my highly ambitious nature. He tried to convince me that men had it worse during pregnancy. He has been openly racist to me, and outwardly I am a person of color. He shoved me to the wall with his hands on my neck when I cried when Trump won in 2016. He was sexually aggressive and had a lot of sexual fantasies that were very questionable, to the point where my body shut down. He loved shitting on women's bodies after they've given birth. And mind you, he was below average and has no sense of athleticism. He was forceful about having children with me, and I wasn't ready. He told me that I would be an old haggard if I didn't have children at 24 when I was trying to finish university. He was 27 and his men ovaries were having extreme baby fever. He would scream at me and record me every time we would have fights. He also cheated on me. It's been many years and I, vomiting face, every time for allowing myself to have given him that time. I can never have back, but I have forgiven myself and buried him deep into a black hole. Yesterday, I went to a get-together with a few hometown friends. My friend is mutuals with my ex's sister. She spilled some tea about him without me asking, lol. He's now married with the woman he was sleeping with during that time frame. They popped out 3 kids in 2.5 years, no breaks. His wife is controlling. My friend pointed out that she was really physically unappealing. She found out that I moved back home. I'm leaving in a few months, and she was so outraged that now they're moving to Idaho. Lol, I'm in SoCal, which is the last trip him and I took before we broke up. His mom and sister have cut off ties with him and his family cause he hurt his mom. He apparently still checks my online presence and continuously thinks about me. Whoa. I know that wasn't petty, but I'm happy that the universe helped him get the life he always dreamed of. Edit update, 10:14 a.m., March 25th. Hi everyone. Thank you for sharing your stories and all sorts of comments. I 100 am grateful for all of you all. I wanted to share this on here because it felt like a good place to vent. I didn't think it would receive a lot of comments and such. I wanted to post this because I feel it's quite draining to respond to each message of support, as it's not fun reliving experiences and such, but thank you nonetheless. Anyway, just to clarify, this was a relationship that started 10 years ago and ended a long time ago. So, I've since moved on and have had a really adventurous and fruitful life fulfilling whatever my heart desires. This person was my literal first boyfriend. Lol, I am 31 now. I didn't grow up in an environment where healthy relationships were a thing. We have always been taught to endure and persevere and ignore in my family culture. I didn't know my experiences were terrifying and that my feelings of hurt were genuinely normal until I started talking to my friends and learning of other people's experiences. I went along with everything and endured because 1. I felt trapped and thought my perception of what is considered normal were basically gaslighted by this human. 2. My younger self thought that enduring struggles was a test of the strength of a relationship. Minus the openly racist comments, everything I've mentioned were of him confiding his thoughts and true emotions in private. Yes, we had an entire argument about pregnancy and how he thought it was weird that his stepsister didn't snap back into her petite form. I'm gonna stop there. It gets worse. I choose to move on with my life and remove any remaining skid marks he's left on my psyche by going to therapy and becoming the best version of myself. Thank you for your support and kindness. Blue Heart, update, 10:37 a.m. The conversation with my friend happened on Saturday the 23rd of March 2024. I fully believe in the universe being of service now. Fuck with my job and I'll fuck with your marriage. I already know I'm the asshole for this, but this is what happened. My manager is an Indian woman and was constantly making passive-aggressive comments about my ethnicity Afghan. I've worked at Subway for around 6 months and neither did I or any of my co-workers get along with her. She was the biggest micromanager I've ever met and would make up random rules, then would yell at us in front of the customers if we made a mistake. I know she made up these rules because when I would follow them, the owner of the store would question what I was doing and tell me I'm not supposed to do that. She would also make racist remarks about me and my co-workers. My friend was explaining how she had to slaughter a goat for her religion, then she laughed in her face and said that's disgusting. And on my first day I told her I was from Afghanistan. She said you're a fake Afghan. You look Chinese. A couple months fast forwarded and I had to work in the morning with just her. I was at the front taking care of orders when there was a huge rush of people. She was in the back eating food when she wasn't even on break. So as I'm taking care of all these orders, I like to frequently change my gloves after handling pork to accommodate any religious beliefs. These gloves would pile up and yeah, there were some crumbs on the table. However, when the rush was done, she then decided to come out and started scolding me for making a mess. I explained to her that there was a rush and I didn't have time to start cleaning in the middle of orders. She still insisted that I could have took out the trash and wiped the counters when there was a line of people waiting, then started pointing out everything I did wrong, following with a "You're like a baby, you don't know how to do anything." I was so done with her, so I left right then and there. I told my friend what happened. She also worked with me, and we decided to make a fake Instagram account to catfish her husband. Yes, I know this was wrong, but we were bored petty teenagers. His Instagram was pretty easy to find, so we messaged him. He instantly responded back and kept flirting with us, wanting to meet up the next day. We sent the screenshot to our manager, but she blocked us, so I guess she wanted to stay. I bet there are lots of posts like this up here. Retail employment. A great place to be when biding your time ahead of starting university as a mature student. Especially when a manager is posterior onto the shop floor at 08:50. Manager tells me I'm late. I check time. It is 08:50 by my watch and the clock on the shop floor. I say so. He tells me that we go by his watch and I am 10 minutes late. His watch is over 10 minutes ahead. Sorry, sir. I'm already thinking ahead to the end of my shift. Long day. I'm due to finish at 8 p.m. At 7:50, I am on the only live till and I take it out of service and start cashing up. There was no customer at the time. Manager sees me and queries why. Time to close the store. Shut tills and cash up. Check your watch. He almost explodes before he realizes that I have zero interest or need to maintain employment with his store as I am due to start university next week. I turned up the next day, sought him out before starting work and did a time check to see what times I was going to adhere to that day. Needless to say, he used the store time rather than his wrist. I locked my Aldi cart to another person's cart inside the store. I was at Aldi and there was a woman shopping by herself with a rather full cart. My first encounter. She had her cart sideways, blocking most of the aisle, standing against one side and looking at food on the other side. I make my way past her and of course as soon as I'm close, she steps forward to get the food she was looking at. I politely do the oops excuse me and wait to pass, not even bothered yet. Whatever, it happens all the time. Second time, I'm pushing my cart along the outside and she's about to pull in front of me. I can see it. She half goes without looking, but hesitates, and I stop because I think she's about to. But then, she doesn't, so I start to go, and then she hesitates again, and pushes right in front of me. I roll my eyes. The third time I see her, She parks it totally sideways and blocking the whole aisle between those island freezers and the wall. She leaves it unattended and goes to get something else. So in the middle of grumbling and reaching to move it, I instead put her latch into my cart, leave my 3-4 items, take my quarter back, and scurry off to get a new cart. I don't think she had another quarter, as I saw her trying to push both awkwardly at the same time in different directions to the check. It's rude to whisper. Hi all. I've been reading this subreddit for a while now, but never really thought I had anything to share. However, I've just remembered a little story from when I was a kid, and thought it belonged here. Let me know if it doesn't. English is my first language, but I often make typing errors, and I don't post on Reddit much, so I apologize for any formatting errors. The context: I have an aunt, I'll call her Susan for the sake of this post, and she has a son who I'll call John. John is a very similar age to me, so I would spend a lot of time with John when I was little, and he would spend a lot of time at my parents' house. Susan wasn't married to John's father, let's call him Harry, but they were in a relationship at the time. It wasn't a great relationship though. All of that is relevant, I think, so with that sorted, let's move on to the story. This story takes place on a day that Susan had been arguing with Harry. They lived together at the time, and she'd left the house to get away from him. She decided to come round to visit my mom to vent, and I was home as well. While Susan and my mom were talking, the doorbell went. Harry had turned up with John, and they were both outside. Susan quickly ran upstairs to avoid seeing him, and I was told not to let Harry know she was there. I'm guessing Harry was over because he wanted to know if my mom had heard from Susan, or wanted to drop John off so he could go look for her. I don't really know, I was pretty young at the time and that wasn't what I was thinking about. What I was thinking was that I needed clarification on the rule that I'd just been given. You can probably see where this is going. My mom answered the door, and started to speak to Harry. Meanwhile I started tugging at her, trying to get my mom's attention to be able to ask her a question in private. After a little while, with me trying to find a way of whispering to my mom, she eventually says in frustration, "Mooch, it's rude to whisper. Anything you want to say, you can say out loud." At this point, there's nothing I can do, except ask in the raised voice of a child who has been told to speak up. "I know I'm not allowed to tell Harry, but can I tell John his mom's upstairs?" Cue a stunned silence, in which my mortified mother mentally processes what just happened, and comes to terms with the fact she couldn't even tell me off for doing exactly what she said. Harry, bless him, tried to pretend he hadn't heard anything, even if it was painfully obvious that he must have heard, and left shortly after. John stayed, and saw Susan. Susan later went back home, and I'm guessing she argued with Harry some more. They really weren't great for each other. And as for my mom, I don't think she ever really lived it down. I think she still catches her breath when she remembers how awkward that moment was. And she never told me not to whisper. I've been calling my sister by her full given name when she dead names my niece. My brother's kid 22F came out as trans on her 21st birthday about a year ago and changed her name from Lance to Lacey. Fake names. Most of our family accepted it, and the ones who didn't weren't close anyway, except our sister Eva 45F. We are a Native American family with a lot of creative names, and my sister's birth name is something close to Evangeline. But she decided to go by Eva after a white kid said her name was rezzed out low class stereotypical name from an Indian reservation. She's insisted on Eva for about 35 years and we all obliged. Now, she's regularly been calling my trans niece by her dead name Lance since she came out as trans, so I started calling her Evangeline, which she hates. The whole family caught on and have only been referring to her as Evangeline for about a year now, and she is furious every time she comes to family events. Recently she's been calling me by my full first name to bother me. My first name is a portmanteau hyphenation of my mom's 4 sisters' name. Something like Alexiana Dorothea but wackier. People have always called me AD or Alexi, or my brother called me Dudu since he is a kid. I love my full first names, but it's cumbersome to use an 8-syllable name regularly. Well, my full name caught on with family and friends. Just to spite Evangeline, we have all reverted back to our full names instead of nicknames. Our dad is no longer Frank, he's Franklin. Our mom is no longer Roz, she is Rosalind. Brother is no longer Nate, he is Nathaniel. Sil is no longer Kate, she is Catherine, etc. All fake names. This has truly driven Evangeline away, which was the plan in the first place. Lacey makes for better company, so good riddance to one. My annoying frat boy neighbor. I 21F live next to 20-something M. Let's call him Ty. Ty is your typical annoying messy frat boy. I don't mind his barking, he's an omega, dancing, or music during the day, but at 10 I want to go to bed. His music is so loud that it's shaking our only combined wall and I can hear every beat. So first I had a conversation with him, then I left a note for him, So now on to the pettiness. He was blasting his music at 10:30 tonight, so I sat next to a combined wall connected to his Bluetooth speaker and started blasting children's cleanup songs and nursery rhymes. I could hear the confusion coming from next door, then the music cutting off. He did it again at 11, so I played Barney I Love You, You Love Me. The music went off pretty fast with more complaining. So now every time he's annoying, I'm going to play something equally annoying. Give me Spotify recommendations of things I can play for my annoying neighbor. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face. Edit. Thank you all for the Rex. He will be hearing Yoko Ono's I Want You to Remember Me Part B next. Now I have to figure out how to make him not treat our front yard like a trash can and remember to put the can at the street. Edit. So lots of you don't know what an omega is. An omega is someone in the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. In the black community, fraternities aren't just a fun club lots of omegas brand themselves. It's a way to network, get jobs, do community service, and of course party. If you're curious about the barking and dancing, click here. Omegas, my dog, the genius. I teach all the dogs I train to pee and poo on command. I always say that it's so that you can tell your dog to pee-poo quickly if it's raining, or if you need to take them inside somewhere and don't want them to have an accident. Today I was walking Mal and he was sniffing at some grass in front of a block of flats. Let me stress, everyone uses this grass for their dogs. And I, for one, always clean up after my dog. So Mal is sniffing and minding his own business when some guy in one of the flats starts pounding on his window and yelling at me to get FK off his grass. Sir, you live in a flat. This is not your grass. If he had politely asked me not to let my dog on the grass, I would have apologized and never used the grass again. But he was a jerk, so I did the only thing I could do. I looked the guy in the eye and said, Mal, poo, and he did. Mal didn't even hesitate, he immediately squatted and pooed. I bagged it up, of course, and resisted the urge to throw it at the guy's window. You guys, I think this might be my proudest dog training moment ever. Good boy Mal. ETA. A lot of people have asked how I trained Mal to poo on command, so here's what I did. It takes time, but take the dog out and say go poo over and over and over. You will look like a crazy person, but pay no mind. When they do poo, make a big deal of it and say good poo. Maybe give a few treats. Do the same for pee. In a few weeks they should have it. Mal and I will be moving back to Los Angeles from the UK in September, and I'll be taking my dog training business with me. If anyone in LA is looking for training, just send me a DM and I'll let you know when I'm back in town. Smiley face. Neighboring street left me passive-aggressive note implying damage to road surface, snapping my windscreen wiper linkage for parking for half a day. A local campsite has mystically moved its address on Google Maps across the railway a few meters to the end of their road. I'm in the UK. I parked on a residential street with one of those homemade private road signs that has no legal waiting on for half a day, as my usual space on some village common land was occupied. I was not blocking anyone or parked in a way that was obstructive to the pavement or the road. When putting a sign on my vehicle, they must have been pissed off because the wiper linkage had been snapped. The printed note left on it implying that I was not legally allowed to park there and that residents pay for maintenance, etc. A local campsite has mysteriously changed locations by a few meters across a railway track at the end of their street, and the RVs motorhomes have started arriving for Easter and are going up there and having to turn around. Oh dear. Neither a borrower or an arrogant XP. In my early 20s I dated a guy who was super into vintage 1950s-60s Vespas Italian motor scooters. All of his friends had them and they would ride them together in rallies. So it was a very central part of his life. This guy was a very smooth talker and charming. My parents were very generous people and I feel he took advantage of that. One day while he was waiting for me to show up, he convinced my parents to lend him $300. The deal was done by the time I got there. Trying to be optimistic, I vouched for him and promised my parents they'd get the money back. Every time I brought up paying my parents back, I would get the yeah I will and some BS excuse why it couldn't be now. This was something that bugged me to no end, and over the 2 years we were together became something I became more and more adamant about. Although charming, he had a fatal flaw. When it came to our relationship, he thought I was an idiot. I say this because he cheated on me and thought he was so slick about it and I would never find out. Well, I did from the get-go too. Epic fight and I broke up with him. He decided to move out of state to find himself. Every single day he was gone, he would write me letters and poems affirming that I was his destiny and that as soon as he came back I would see how much he had changed and I wouldn't be able to deny our future. Before he left, he took it upon himself to park his scooter on my front porch, assumingly so I could keep his eye on it. He was so arrogantly assured that I was taking him back that he didn't even think to ask. I had told him over and over that I wasn't taking him back and you get one chance, and he fucked it up. In his mind I was going to take him back with open arms. While he was gone, several of his friends and people he had done deals with confided in me how he owed them money or screwed them over. I knew the chance of him voluntarily paying my parents back was over. One day about 2 weeks after he left, I decided that the only way way my parents were getting repaid was if I took matters in my own hands. I called a business run by several of the guys in the scooter community and offered to sell his scooter for $300, a ridiculously good price. On the phone call I never had to say who I was because, by the description of the scooter, they knew exactly who the scooter belonged to. I explained the situation and they jumped at the chance to buy it. I took the money and repaid my parents. When the ex returned, he just assumed the scooter was stolen and didn't even ask me a single question. He tried in vain to get me back, but while he was gone I met someone new and had unequivocally moved on without him. The only thing I offered him about the missing scooter was one day it was just parked on my porch and then one day it was gone. Was I supposed to be watching out for it? You never asked me to. The owners of the shop never said anything and I never said anything. Years later I found out that he had accused someone completely out of the picture of stealing it. This guy thought it was hilarious that he thought he had stolen it because it was so far-fetched. I think it got sold to someone out of state because it was never part of the scene again. It found good to pay my parents back and that they didn't become another person. Poured cement through my boomer neighbor's door. I 29 meters have been dealing with an insane boomer neighbor, let's call him Bruce, for a few months now. He is a member of my neighborhood's HOA and frequently apprehends me for violations he makes up. Last week my roof shingles were misaligned and under threat of eviction made me hire a roofer to perform an inspection. $300 later and what do you know? The roof is up to code and aligned correctly. He has also been making violent threats to my dog when he sees me walking him around the block. My dog is extremely well trained. We'll call my dog Morpheus for the story and I feel comfortable walking him off leash. Bruce, however, takes a huge issue with that, as according to HOA policy, dogs outside of an enclosed yard must be leashed at all times. He threatened to call animal control on me, or break into my house at night and kill me and my dog. The police won't get involved because a crime hasn't technically been committed yet, so yesterday I took matters into my own hands. I had excess concrete powder from a job I was working on independent contractor and decided it would be sweet revenge to pour as much concrete as possible through the mail slot in his door. I waited for him to leave for work in the afternoon, wheeled the cement over and poured it all into his mail slot. When he got home he came and slammed on my door yelling to open up. I smugly opened the door, but apparently his own dog had been at the door when I poured the cement, and I completely buried him and unfortunately Rupert, his dog, had passed away. I truly believe after the hell he put me through that I am not completely in the wrong here, but I do feel sort of bad. I had to pay some damages from the cement removal, totaling up to $6,000. It's been a few days since the dust settled, and decided to put this story out on Reddit. Edit was not expecting the overwhelmingly negative response I've gotten so far. I've heard about armchair detectives before, but the phenomenon is evidently quite pervasive. To answer a few common questions, he has a garage around the side of the house. This doesn't affect the story at all, so I don't know why you're focused on it. People are also hung up about the money aspect. I live in an area with constant new developments. It is heaven for an independent contractor because companies are putting up cardboard quality houses that need repairs in under a year. The money wasn't an issue. Of course I'm upset about the dog aspect. One detail I forgot to mention is Bruce doesn't have a dog, or didn't at the time of pouring. He came home drunk, having stolen a dog from someone's truck bed, then blamed me for the concrete fair but made up a dog and said this was a replacement. Hope that clears. Primary school thug teacher. This took place in a boys' primary school, and most of us were roughly 10 years old. We had a teacher, Mr. Stewart. While not my class master, he did take us for music a couple of times a week. He saw himself as a bit of a man's man, but what he was a bullying bastard. A simple misdemeanor, e.g. repeatedly talking when told to be quiet, would result in being strapped on the hands 3 or 4 times. For a more serious crime, swearing or punching someone, would be 6 of the best, or 3 on each hand. Almost no class went by without someone being strapped on the hand, including me. Keep in mind that we were 10 years old. On this day, one of my classmates, Kevin, was acting up a bit. Looking back, there is no doubt he had some form of that. And in the 70s no one recognized that for what it was. Kevin was constantly in trouble, and while I don't recall what he had done on this day, it attracted 6 straps from Mr. Bully Boy. Now these straps are made up of 6 strips of leather about the size of a 30cm or 12-inch ruler stitched together to form a very stiff and heavy weapon. Kevin walked up to the front of the class and put his right hand out, and Mr. Stewart gave him 3 hard fast whacks on the palm. Kevin shrieked out in extreme pain, something we never did. The code was to not make a sound and don't show pain when being strapped. It's just the way it was at that time. What happened was, as the strap was coming down for the first whack, Kevin had put his thumb across his palm. The strap stroke broke his thumb. Needless to say that Kevin's parents went ballistic. Mr. Stewart was immediately suspended and sent to another school. Later I found out he had been banned from using any form of corporal punishment by the diocese. Kevin had taken a painful one for the team, recording a manipulative liar and turn his words against him. It was during college. At the time, my best friend was in a very toxic relationship. Her boyfriend was very petty and manipulative, and they would always fight for no reason. He would lie all the time to get people's attention and consideration, and he could be flirtatious with other girls. You get the picture. While they were still together, she discovered that he was cheating on her with one of my closest friends from college. She was devastated, and so was I. I ended up being very upset against my so-called friend that she didn't tell me what she was doing, even though it would imply hurting someone I love. Hurting my friends means hurting me, and it was almost done on purpose. Besides, I saw her with him before I found out, and they seemed to enjoy each other's company. No one was angry. No one showed any kind of remorse. No one was trying to be respectful by avoiding the other. I naturally ended the relationship with her because I couldn't forgive her behavior, and best friend left her boyfriend. However, he tried his best to win her back by knocking on her door in the middle of the night, calling me in tears and threatening to kill himself out of desperation. He even had the nerve to denigrate the girl he had cheated with terrible things. I knew for sure that he was going to criticize my best friend in front of my ex-friend to play with both of them and take advantage of the situation. So I decided to beat him at his own game, so that the liar couldn't lie anymore. While he was on the phone, I asked my best friend to turn on the speaker and I started recording him. I wrote a few little questions for her to ask, just to add fuel to the fire. He answered as expected, saying horrible things about the other girl. She's too fat to be loved. She's just a whore. She has no self-respect or self-esteem. He'd rather die than touch her again. Alcohol has a terrible effect on me and she's just disgusting. Once again. You get the picture. Then she hung up and I started to cut the rush to create something which would sound more like an old bastard monologue than a discussion. I'd managed to make it sound like he'd finally said all his horrors in one go. I gave it to my best friend to send to the girl. The girl was so damaged by the voice that she took it to her brother, who came to beat up the man who finally could not lie and fight against his own voice. I have no remorse for what I've done. I think sometimes people need to be treated the way they treat their own petty revenge for Tell me to clean my room? As you wish. When I was 15, my mom and dad got divorced. It was an insane relief to me, as my dad was extremely mentally, verbally, and physically abusive. All was well for a while and I had very little contact with my dad. Of course that didn't last long. He started poking around more, and demanding I come visit him. As much as I didn't want to, my mom pleaded with me to suck it up and go see him, as he was sending her constant hurtful and threatening texts. I begrudgingly went to see him. When I arrived he told me to get in the car. He wouldn't tell me where we were going and my stomach began to churn. We pulled into the parking lot of Walmart where he told me to pick out all of the toiletries I would need at his house. I told him I was fine, and then he told me that I would be staying at his house every other week. I immediately began to panic as none of this had been discussed previously. I knew that the law stated that because of my age I got to choose who I stayed with, but he always had a way of getting around things. When I got home that night I sobbed to my mom about the endeavor and pleaded with her to not make me stay there. She was shocked, as she had not had any discussion about this, but she assured me I did not have to stay there. I informed my father of this and he didn't reply. A few weeks later I got a text from him demanding that I come out to his house to clean my room. I knew this was another ploy to force me to visit, so I brushed it off as long as I could. A week later he told me I need to clean my room or he would be throwing everything I own away. When my mom and I had originally left I only had time to pack a small suitcase, so all of my sentimental items, a majority of my clothes, and my siblings' remaining stuff was still in the room. I was furious that he would threaten to do this, but then I saw my opportunity for revenge. I set up a date and time to come clean my room. I didn't say a word to my dad when I got to the house and got to work. I packed up everything I owned into some boxes, and slid them out of the window. I then crawled out and loaded them into my car so he wouldn't be suspicious. Then I cleaned the now empty room within an inch of its life. I took down every picture on the wall, stripped the bedding, vacuumed, cleaned the windows inside and out, and even scrubbed the walls. The room was spotless. I left no stone unturned, as I knew he would try to find something I missed, so I would have to come back. I could have just left then, but I had a moment of bravery, and decided to ask him to check the room. He happily agreed and I watched his face go from confused, to angry, to cold. It was so satisfying. He looked at me and said, "So I'm assuming you're not coming back?" I just smiled at him, and the city wanted us to get rid of native grass, so we built an urban wetlands. It all goes back to the summer of 2021. I started working as a biologist at an urban farm, planning and constructing polyculture systems to research food production. I developed a plan for noxious weed control and started to construct the systems over the course of 2 years. During this time we had some back and forth with the city council, who didn't understand the nature of our agriculturally zoned property. After several meetings and lots of work over 2 years, we'd finally made a lot of progress and reached an agreement with the city by the summer of 2023. Part of the agreement was to mow ditches and the small yard of our property's farmhouse. I'll remind you the property is zoned as agriculture, so we have no obligation to follow residential ordinances. About halfway through the summer at the end of July, the city came onto our property and mowed our entire native pasture and what was soon to be an orchard of already planted baby trees. When we talked to them, they noted ordinances against tall grass and state noxious weed laws as a justification. The latter of which is ironic because they interrupted our system of invasive plant control by mowing in a time when we should have been spraying by a herbicide. So now in order to remove all the invasive plants from my property and comply with all the ordinances, none of which have anything to do with water, I have created a massive urban wetlands. It's huge, it's beautiful, it's wet, it's compliant to every law and ordinance. It's mine and the city mayor who lives next door to my farm can enjoy it just as much as I enjoy it living 5 miles away. So now I have a wetlands to research instead of a prairie, and I love it. The one time I was rude to a bartender. This took place around 15 years ago. I was out with a bunch of colleagues on AITA, and we were at a pub in the city we all lived in. 2 of us went up to the counter. Is this the correct word? English is not my first language, where the bartender was on the phone. We get it. They do need to take phone calls from time to time. It could have been someone who wanted to make a reservation or something like that, and it wasn't a busy time of the evening. However, instead of signaling to us that she would be with us in a minute make eye contact and hold up a finger, she gave us a look as if we were disturbing her and then demonstratively turned her back against us and kept talking. Since no one else was there to serve customers, we had to wait for her to finish the phone call. When she did, she went over to us, rolled her eyes at us and with an annoyed tone said yes. My co-worker ordered a beer and got that. I asked for a Smirnoff Ice. She scoffed and said, this time in a very condescending tone, we don't sell that kind of soda-inspired beverages here, you know. I said alright, I'll just have a Coke then. Once again she rolled her eyes and gave me a Coke, that she kind of slammed on the counter a bit from me so I would have to lean over or take a step to the side to reach. I decided to take a small revenge on her rudeness. I usually don't carry cash, but this time, I actually did, and it was all coins. So instead of paying with my card as I usually would, I used the coins instead. I held them in my hand but just as she reached for them once again with an eye roll, I slightly twitched my hand so the coins fell in different directions over the counter. Oh, the look she gave me. My co-worker applauded me and we left the place as soon as we finished. Think my race ruined your family? Enjoy the results of the genetic testing. Short version. At my son's birth my ex-partner's mom told me that I'd ruin their family by having a kid with her son and tainting their family line. We're both white but they're from a neighboring country that they pride themselves on. They showed themselves to be really vile racists in general. I'm glad we aren't family anymore and his dad walked out a few years ago too, so the trash took itself out. Cut to yesterday, my son got the results of our genetic test kits he got as a present. He's interested in the tactics of people seeing where they come from. E81 of the background they're so precious about. No trace of the genetic profile they hate so much. My son 53. With around 16 of a background that they hate. Guess it wasn't me that was doing any polluting. The very first thing my son did was send his grandmother the results. And obviously he has no idea of what she said at his birth, but man, that has to have hurt her. Tit for tat, puppy edition. Over a decade ago, my friend brought up to his wife that he wanted a hunting dog. He wanted a specific breed and he wanted to choose it. When I came over on Christmas, I could tell there was tension in the house. Wife decided to buy him a sweet non-hunting dog as a gift. Over the years I would poke fun at the situation and he'd just roll his eyes. Until a couple months ago, friend decided to get a puppy and I was a bit shocked. With a sly grin he explained that a couple months ago his wife said, once this old dog passes, I'm done with pets. Lots of hair and dog prints. So he went out and got the puppy. And no, it wasn't solely purchased for the sake of revenge. Definitely an incentive to buy now. Both dogs are very loved and well taken care of. Too many markdowns? Okay, more damages for you then. And rats. TL Dr. Malicious compliance of idiot distrode product policies leads to worse gross margins and then a rat possible infestation problem threatens the manager more so. Rat likes me. I work in retail and apparently make way too many markdowns since product comes in short dated but outside the time span of getting credits or returning to the suppliers. My ex-boss the good one would say for me to mark them down to just above marginal prices to make any difference. My current boss says to just put coupons on which doesn't work on the people nearby. My manager Mr. Spacely name changed thanks to resemblance is a total control freak ass eater yes man who keeps shifting between corporate opinions, and wants everything toxic colored stickers and radio ads every 10 minutes like the politician he is. Nothing works except the markdowns I make, no ridiculously fluorescent stickers or announcements. Fast forward 5 months to now, and the ex-boss got fired for malicious compliance. I have a lower gross margin with an outrageous amount of markdowns because of corporate forced out distribution. Corporate policy dictates no credits for force outs, and Mr. Spacely keeps yelling, my current boss is a lame duck while corporate claims the numbers are falsified with possible theft lies, and no videotape. But hey, I can't be fired because no one knows my department since they fired my ex-boss and no one in corporate actually knows the department anymore. Nowadays I let the damages pile up since Spacely won't ever do anything with the department when he closes. And better yet, just yesterday morning there was a giant foot-long rat in the warehouse that everyone yelled for me to deal with. I grabbed the shovel nearby and a broom and scooped it up. Then I nearly threatened to let the rat loose on Spacely because my department is the only OSHA-compliant department that no one ever once is able to work. And 2, this is more of an OSHA violation than my department damages. The rat even calmed down near me, funny enough, just the sheer terror on Spacely's face and every ass-eating yes man that morning was worth it. Don't worry, I gave the rat mercy and let it outside safely where it would scurry into the woods away from the store. Spacely needs his own asteroid soon when the spring plant racks come in and more rats will come in. Unplanned revenge. As a child my younger sister was quicker, a capable liar and would usually win any dispute. We'd be about 9 and 8 years of age. A big favorite of hers was to kick me. Under the table I'd kick back and she'd say ow. Why did you kick me? Father would clip me, I'd say but she kicked me first. His response, doesn't matter boys don't hurt girls and she would smirk back at me. I'd fall for the trick frequently, obviously a slow learner. One day in an idle moment I scratched my initial on the leaf of my mother's favorite plant, a rubber plant. Yeah. I mean how stupid can you get? For some reason this was a big thing and my mother had to go at me, panicking I lied and said, do you think I'd be silly enough to put my own initials on the leaf? Mother who knew my sister better than dad, concluded. Not even I'd be that stupid and sister was punished. It was one small win but even now, decades later it will still make me smile. Was denied 2 days of paid PTO, so I took off a whole month. When I worked corrections, I requested for 2 weeks off. I had been there for years and accrued plenty of paid leave. It was given to me as I had done so months in advance for a personal event. The 2 weeks went by way too quick. I had specifically lined up my 2-week break to lead into my 2 days off. At the beginning of the break and at the end so I could maximize my time off. However, during my normal off days a family emergency came up that was quite serious, so I asked for another 2 days off to handle my situation. I was told by my direct supervisor that there was no way she was approving that, because we are only allowed to use 84 hours of leave in one continuous block given our rotating written schedules and 12-hour shifts. This equaled 2 weeks, and she ordered me to come in the next day, or I would receive a write-up. I didn't argue because I knew she was correct, so I showed up that night and reported for my shift. And much to my surprise, my captain had called out sick, so a relief captain came in to fill her shift. I asked him to give me the next day off after my shift was over. He and I had a rapport given the number of years we've worked with each other previously, and so he looked at the schedule and my leave. He said, you know you've got plenty of leave right? Yes, I know. I just need some of it to handle my business tomorrow. No, I mean you've got plenty of leave to take, and get roster is filled the next 2 weeks. Yeah. I just got off a 2-week vacati. I stopped because he winked at me. And it finally clicked. We can only take up to 2 weeks off consecutively. Nothing says we can't take off 2 weeks, come in for, say an hour. Then go home and take off another 2 weeks. So I did and he signed in the paperwork stating, it's not my shift. Fuck that bitch. I handled my emergency literally the next day. It turned out to not be as serious as we thought, and then enjoyed another paid 2 weeks off from work. It was great. To add to the bliss, I reported back from work to find out that this captain was fired and replaced for some kind of negligence or something. It was a great month. Added the captain I worked for was fired. The captain everyone liked to have me. The PTO stayed for a couple more years before watching my housemate die inside. This happened in my second year of university in the UK circa 1998. 6 of us shared a house with an even split of boys and girls. John was my best mate and was very shy and had no confidence with girls. He got on really well with the girls we lived with, Sarah in particular. When we moved in Sarah had a boyfriend who thankfully after a few months she broke up as he was a dick. After this Sarah and John grew closer and she would quite often sit and cuddle with him while watching TV, dance with him when we were out and generally spend a lot of time with him. John was clueless about women and thought they were just besties, but it was clear to everyone they were into each other. The important point to the story is John was still a virgin. Our other male housemate Steve was the opposite of John. He was a player. He had a girlfriend from school who was a few hours away, at another uni, so he'd regularly sleep with anyone that would have him. He also had a crush on Sarah and tried it on with her a few times and got rejected. Steve used to take the mickey out of John for being a virgin. At first it was every so often, and then when John and Sarah were getting closer he started to call him "virgin boy," in an attempt to belittle him. The rest of us told him to knock it off, but he persisted for a few weeks. Not long after we'd got back from Christmas break, a few of us were in the living room after uni and Steve walked in and asked me and virgin boy if we'd like to order pizza for dinner. Sarah walked in from the kitchen at that point, walked over to John, sat on his knee, kissed him, looked at Steve and said, "You can't call him that anymore." We had a great time this morning and he made me come several times. I doubt you've ever managed that with your tiny cock. The rest of us sat there trying to stifle laughter. Steve went bright red, mumbled something and went to his room. Turned out Sarah had made a move on John that morning. They both admitted to being into each other and had slept together. Sarah snapped when she heard virgin boy and decided she'd had enough of Steve. John and Sarah are still together, married with 3 kids. Added Miss Wibta for asking a family to remove their child's death memorial from my property. I recently purchased a home on a country road. 5 years ago some drunk local teenagers wrapped their car around a tree on the property and one died. Their family created a roadside memorial with a 4-foot cross and wooden sign. People come a few times a year and place flowers, notes, etc. The memorial is on my property in front of the tree they hit, about 10 feet from the road. I don't want to see this memorial every day. It's depressing and reminds me that a tragedy happened here, which I don't need. I'm trying to get over some stuff. I want this home to be a fresh, clean start, but I'm also sensitive to the kids' family and friends' feelings. Wibta if I asked the family to take down the memorial. Wibta for not bringing my baby to see my husband's extended family because they ignored me at our baby shower. I 27F am expecting a baby with my husband 28M. My mill 62F threw a baby shower for us, which was honestly super sweet. I have always gotten along with my husband's family and have never once even had a small argument with them. We traveled about a 5-hour drive for the baby shower. We showed up first and guests started showing up. They would drop off gifts and then all sat away. From my husband, and I say for my husband's immediate family. His extended family didn't talk to me at all. What really happened was they were all focused on his one cousin. I tried to say hi to people but they mostly weren't interested and waved and talking to his cousin. Even when it came time to open gifts, that cousin was ignoring us and loudly talking to people the whole time. She kind of made herself the center of attention. I don't dislike her at all, but I ended up feeling hurt and ignored. We originally planned on bringing the baby to visit everyone a couple months after birth, due in a couple weeks, but now I told my husband I don't really want to make the trip just so they can ignore us and coddle the baby. I'm grateful for the presents, but we went to spend time with family mostly and ended up feeling ignored. My husband thinks it's a bit harsh, but I think it's a big trip to make for people who were honestly pretty rude. Wibta if we waited until the holidays. You don't listen to me, so I won't listen to you. Don't know if this counts as petty revenge, but it is a small revenge that I take on this person. At work, I have had the misfortune of dealing with a woman from a compare the utility rates type of business, let's call them second, trying to call our company to change our electricity provider. The caveat is that I work in a small business, so I know for a fact that the company's electricity policy was only recently changed due to a better price from one of these comparison businesses. Let's call this one first, and after they called again to tell us about a better rate that they found, the boss told the first business and the team that he does not want to change providers again so soon. So, I tell this woman from the second business that we are fine and don't need to change providers, but she kept going in her practiced spiel ignoring what I just said, so I told her again no, but she still did not listen to what I was telling her. As she was not listening to me, I was not going to listen to her and just hung up. The petty revenge part, I am normally a very polite person and will always wish someone a nice day and a goodbye before I hang up a call. But not this time. This was also not the last time she called, and every time she does, I listen only enough to tell her no. And if she doesn't stop the call, then I just hang up on her. No acknowledgement beyond telling her we are not interested. She can waste her time trying to call and speak to the boss, but I have a good memory for voices and I'm the gatekeeper here, so she is not getting that sale KPI no matter how hard she tries, as she definitely did not endear herself to. You really want me to log time by the ticket? I'm sure all of you reading this have to log their work time in one way or another. And I'm sure most of you don't agree with the granularity of said logging. So, I work in IT. Many years ago I was involved in a big project creating a new platform while maintaining the old one. So, during the week I would spend some time on support tickets. My role was more high level. I would never be the one to actually work on a ticket. At one point in time, There was a new support coordinator assigned to the client account. The number of tickets was rising and the team couldn't keep up, threatening the new platform. The coordinator needed metrics on the team's performance, so he generated reports from the ticketing and the time logging systems, combined them, and started looking into improvements. Until he came across my logs. The metrics told him I spent about 2 hours a week and edited a varying amount of tickets. This looks weird and he couldn't bill the client on tickets I worked on. So he asked me what was going on. I explained that I would look over the list of open tickets, bulk update where needed, and log my time with a remark like classified tickets. Then I would move on to my other duties. He didn't like that and told me to enter a time log for each separate ticket I work on. I asked him what the minimum time was that he wanted me to log, which turned out to be 15 minutes. Fast forward a few weeks of me spending an hour a day logging hours and logging that task too and creating virtual overtime of about an hour a day. Then the coordinator comes up to me with a request to go through and update the full backlog. I'm fine with that and tell him I'm logging that as a generic task and not per ticket. He tells me no, it must be logged per ticket. So finally the malicious compliance I spend about 2 hours to go over the backlog and make sure everything is in order. Then I spend the rest of the day entering everything into the time logging system. Fun fact, I was the first to reach the system's limits, but found a workaround to log everything. That day, as logged in the time tracking software, I worked for more than 16 hours. The rest of the week I took it easy, came in late, went home early. I was done for the week and every hour I worked extra would be unpaid, right? When it came time for the invoicing, the coordinator could not justify the huge amount of hours I logged on the account. My rate was twice that of a tech support and finally he allowed me to stop logging by the ticket. My productivity went up again, as did my mood. I did flag the potential problems and drop in productivity to the CTO and CEO, who I reported to directly, but they said to comply anyway. We did laugh about it afterwards and learned a lesson in how not to waste time. Thank you for reading my story. DLDR instructed to log time per support ticket. Worked 16 hours on a 2-hour task. Client refused to pay. You want petty? How's this? I work in a small office block of 5 floors with a basement car park and only a single lift working at present instead of 2. I'm on the 2nd floor and a few desks away from me works an older guy who I will call Dickhead. Dickhead is a character but also just plain offensive and sarcastic at times and has been a bit of a prick to me a few times when I have asked for his help, which has really pissed me off and insulted my intelligence. I don't like him. I try not to talk to him. I don't care what he did on the weekend or what he thinks about anything. We all work with someone like this. I'm sure you can relate. So the other morning I arrive at work and realize that Dickhead is not in. Wonderful, I think to myself. No jokes, no music, no Dickhead perhaps for the. I left my earbuds in my car, so go down to the basement car park to get them. I notice Dickhead has just arrived late, has pulled his car into a spot on the back wall, and is getting out of his car as I get back into the lift with my earbuds. I don't hold the lift for him. He's too far away. I don't even think he noticed me. As I get out on my floor the second I have a moment of inspiration and run my hand down all the buttons on the lift and get out, sending the lift to every floor above me before it would go back down to the basement to collect Dickhead. I bought myself a few extra minutes of being Dickhead free. It's so petty it's laughable, but I enjoyed it. I got away with it. You want to ticket my trailer? Meet me in court. Kinda. Long time lurker, first time poster here. This is not my story, but my dad's. But he was happy to let me share it with you. The folks at Pro Revenge weren't that happy with this over there since it's a lot of little things rather than one big thing, so I thought it might fit better here. My dad 47M is a big fan of camping, but being a lawyer turned judge, he couldn't camp as much as he wants. He had also gotten tired of setting up a muddy tent for nights on end, so he finally got a camping trailer. It is a nice little one that can fit himself, my stepmom, me, and my 2 siblings for a night. But it's a tight fit. It's also a tight fit in our driveway, so I can't park my car there anymore. Enough of my complaining though. A couple months ago, my dad was walking past the trailer when he saw a ticket posted on it. It stated that due to city ordinance, my dad couldn't park his trailer in a side yard lot and would be getting a fine if he didn't move it. My dad, being the law-educated man he is, immediately called the number to have a talk with the city official. The man on the phone, who we will call Ticket Man, told Dad that there wasn't much that he could do other than move his trailer since his driveway goes up to the side of his house, counting as a side yard. Dad asked if Ticket Man could cite the law and, surprisingly, Ticket Man told him exactly where to find it. So my dad sat down with the city zoning laws and read them over. One thing to note about city laws is that there are often differences in what is allowed based on the definitions of properties. For example, a house on the corner of a neighborhood might have different rules than a house in the middle on one, and wouldn't you know, my dad's house is on a corner, The official term for his property in the law is a corner property, and his side yard is called a corner side lot. So he read over the rules again, and nowhere does it ever state that a corner side lot is exempt from parking a trailer on the property. In fact, it isn't mentioned at all, meaning there are no rules to stop my dad from parking it anywhere on his yard. I'd love to say that this is when my dad parked it in the elevated front yard, but my dad would never ruin his grass to be petty, so he just called Ticket Man again. Dad started to explain his reasoning again, but Ticket Man stopped him and said that the ticket was already taken back. My dad asked why, and he explained that normally the city is fine with a few tickets a day, all being very open and shut cases. But a couple days ago they had received an order from an unnamed member of the city's board saying that they need to ticket all trailers illegally parked. Now, my dad knows who she is and knows that this was absolutely a case of one-off. Her neighbors getting a trailer and her wanting it gone. But that didn't explain how the tickets got rescinded. Ticket Man explained further that the city's legal counsel had told them that if they didn't remove the tickets, they would get around $1.5 million in fines. But they would lose out on all of the taxes on these trailers due to most of them most likely being moved outside the city to be parked legally. Basically, if they didn't pull the fines, they would lose out on tens of millions of dollars in taxes. Ticket Man had to immediately void all of the over 400 fines. My dad asked him about his corner property argument, and Ticket Man told him that he was actually right and they had a good laugh over it. However, that's not where it ends. Like I said earlier, my dad is a judge. The week he was hearing a small case where someone was arguing that a ticket on their car was not correct, and wouldn't you know it, one of the witnesses was Ticket Man. My dad told me that the look on his face was priceless when he said hello to Ticket Man. You could see the gears turning in his head as he recognized my dad's voice but didn't know from where. He's apparently been in his court multiple times since then and definitely remembers where he heard his voice before. It wasn't the most outrageous story, but I love all the different dominoes falling into each other. You've got the city saying no to the board member who now has to deal with her neighbor having a trailer on their property. You've got the city almost losing out on a lot of money in taxes. You've got my dad giving a little heart attack to Ticket Man in court. And then you have dad's attempt at being petty that he kinda dropped the ball on. Added, I saw a few people were getting confused about how the taxes on trailers work in my areas. You can legally park a trailer in some cases, such as parking it on a concrete lot in the backyard. The tickets were for trailers parked illegally, such as the street or in a driveway that is not large enough. People with trailers on the street get fined anyway, and that has nothing to do with it. But because of the way my dad's driveway is positioned, it counts as a side lot due to having a strip of grass next to it. If it wasn't on the corner of the neighborhood, then he would technically be in the wrong. However, because it is a corner property, it has a different legal definition that is never actually stated in the bylaws. On that note, trailers can be taxed by our city due to us being a medium-sized city, meaning that you need to buy two of larger vehicles like a trailer, a tractor, or whatever other larger vehicle is taking up more parking space. When people park them in driveways, they usually don't care as they aren't in anyone's way. The reason it mattered here is because most of the people who would have been fined would not have anywhere else to park them, and because of this the only real option would be to park them somewhere completely different, such as outside the city or in a rental parking spot, neither of which the city can tax. So basically, if they find people, then they would have to board up their trailers, which would mean they wouldn't be taxed as they wouldn't be on city property anymore. I hope this explanation helps, and feel free to ask if you need any more details in the comments.